Good morning and welcome back to the channel this morning in the One Celtic Fans View. Just when you thought things maybe couldn't get any worse, we're out of the Champions League, but let's face it, we could be just as bad as Manchester United. They have spent over 400 million over the last 3 seasons. Over 400 million. Celtic are complaining about the fact that we haven't spent any money for the Champions League, but listen to this rant.
Because there's a stat that's knocking around, okay? And this is it just compounds the misery. It's the second time ever finished at the bottom of the group. 4 points, the worst ever total in the Champions League. There must be Celtic fans laughing because we rib Celtic. Manchester United, you are the Celtic of English football in the Champions League. The most goals ever conceded in a group stage by a Premier League side. 15 goals. And just to compound that again, the joint most goals conceded of all 32 clubs in the group stage this season, joint with Antwerp.
So, Celtic fans, what do you think of that this morning? It is a poor dig, but when you think of the money that Manchester United spent, between 400 and 500 million in the last 3 or 4 seasons, they were in a group with Copenhagen. Now, Celtic should be trying to emulate what Copenhagen do. Can Celtic get on 4 points? Can we win that group game tonight? Tell me what you think in the comments. Anyway, one of the funniest things that I've seen talking about Celtic and talking about Nat Phillips. Nat Phillips has been told. Oh, this is hilarious. Nat Phillips is Liverpool are set to recall centre backs Reece Willis and Nat Phillips after unsuccessful loan spells, and this went out on Twitter last night. Some of the comments from Liverpool fans about Nat Phillips. Nat Phillips just needs to be sold. Nat Phillips is rank rotten. The next one, recall Nat Phillips? Really? Both not good enough. Anyway, and then the Celtic fans jump in, and Nat Phillips is one of the worst defenders I've ever seen play in the game, and I've seen a few bad ones in a Celtic jersey. Anyway, let's get to the Celtic news. Let's get to Kyogo, because Brendan Rodgers last week called a Celtic player, said he's not a baby due to his age being 24. And let's face it, Mikey Johnson isn't a baby. He is 24, and it was a nice jibe from the Celtic manager, but he's also used it against Kyogo. Now, at this point, we think, what's Kyogo done to deserve such a thing? But let's be realistic. I mean, Kyogo does get bullied a bit off the ball. Now, I'm going to put a comparison to the baby-faced assassin. We seem to be all Man United this morning for some reason. But you look at the baby-faced assassin back in the day for Manchester United, he was probably about the same size as Kyogo, but he was absolutely prolific in the European stage, and he never got bullied as much off the ball. And I think this is what maybe Brendan Rodgers is having a little dig about. He isn't a baby. He's 28-year-old, as Brendan says. He is the best goal scorer in Scotland, right? He's one of the main reasons that we won the league the last 2 seasons. Brendan Rodgers has come out and said there is absolutely nothing different being asked of him this season. Playing to his strength, playing off the last line of defenders. His timing, his movement is being instinctive in the box. He's not a dribbler, says Brendan Rodgers. He's not someone who does drop in, but he can do it. But it's not his strength. And that is always a challenge for a striker who wants to have an effect in the game. He is very receptive. He's not a baby. Remember, he is 28 years old of age, says Brendan Rodgers. So as far as Brendan Rodgers is concerned, he's done nothing different to Kyogo this season. And I think he's probably listened to the fans saying, why has he changed the way that Kyogo plays? Getting them to drop deeper. He's changed Kyogo from a fantastic striker to someone that's not being able to get the service. Now, I put that down to the wingers and everything else. You can look at everything that's wrong with the team just now, but we're not going to do that because we want to try and be as positive as we can about Celtic. We look at it, we are still top of the league. Well, the most important game, now Brendan did give a little update on some of the players that are out injured. Obviously, Dyson Maeda put on his social media last night that he is back in training, he's on the pitch. Cameron Carter-Vickers will be rested for tonight. I don't think that we should play Cameron Carter. Look, the most important game The most important game that we have between now and the end of the year is on the 30th of December. Keep everyone as fit as we can for that game. It is a must-win game as far as we are concerned, because we want to stay top of the league going into the new year. It is that important. We want to make sure that we can keep our dominance. We know that the team will change a bit in the transfer window. We know that Brendan Rodgers will go out and buy players and bring players in, maybe get a few loan players in. Who knows? You know the way that Celtic work, miraculously. We're scared to spend money, but when we have this 100 million in the bank. But just a reminder this morning that Manchester United have a worst record as it stands just now in Europe as us. So if we can win the game tonight, we can anyway move on. The Champions League's done and dusted. It'll be interesting to see how many people actually turn up for a dead rubber game in the Champions League with nothing for us to play for. It's probably one of the most disappointing ends to a Champions League campaign in a lot of years. You always want to think that you can have that fight. I mean, when I think back to the start of the campaign, and I think back to the start of the campaign and how excited that I particularly got on the live for the draw. I did think that in the Champions League, I thought it was probably one of the easiest groups that we've had in a long time when it comes to the Champions League. But let's face it, we couldn't do it under Ange Postecoglou. We couldn't do it under the manager that was hailed as your saviour. We couldn't do it under him. And we've not been able to do it with the same players. So something needs to change at Celtic. And Brendan Rodgers obviously knows that. Look, he is Celtic through and through. Although some people will say, look, he walked out in the club. That was years ago. It's done and dusted. He is now in for his halfway through his first season. He is contracted for 3 seasons. He will be here for the 3 seasons. He will make sure that he gets us back as far as he's concerned to try and be at least competitive in the Champions League. I'm not going to say that we're going to do things. We're not going to win the Champions League. It's impossible because the Champions League is all set up for the top clubs around Europe. And that's been proven over the years many, many times. But then again, when you can go out and spend 400 million and you finish bottom of the group, you know, it's all about weighing things up and where we want to be. We want to be dominant in Scotland. Yes, the board want us to be dominant in Scotland and they want that to continue. But after 10 years, 20 years of dominance in Scotland, Celtic fans now want a little bit more. They want to have a bit of excitement going into Europe. And let's face it, we've not had any of the excitement for a lot of years when it comes to progressing in Europe, and that's something that we need to. Anyway, Nat Phillips, he is going to be one of the players. If you've seen the video I did yesterday, there's a number of players have been told that they will no longer be of need to Celtic towards the end of the season. James McCarthy looks like he's finally going to get the end of his contract paid off. What an absolute money-grabbing cretin of a person, considering that Celtic did offer to pay him off in the summer. He didn't want it. He didn't want the payoff that he had then because he felt that it was insufficient. And it just shows you the type of person. And the fact that James McCarthy has never been seen. I'd be glad to see the back of some of the players that are getting released. And let's face it, they were all brought in by Ange Postecoglou. So, although the manager did well the 2 seasons that he was with us, he has left us with a conundrum of players that are not good enough going forward and taking the club forward. Anyway, looks like Joe Hart will be in goals this evening again, with the fact that Benji Siegrist is one player that will leave the club in the next window. Where does that take us? It is just going to be a case of sitting back, wait until the window opens, and see who the manager can bring in. And on that note, what do you think the scoreline will be tonight? I have no idea what the scoreline will be tonight. I will be doing a live just before the game kicks off. I have found a new Celtic supporters club here in Spain, so I fancy I'm going to catch up with some of those guys tonight, hopefully. So that'll be there's 4 Celtic supporters club within a nice little region of Spain. So on that note, have a fantastic day. Tell me what you think the scoreline will be. Make sure you join me in the live tonight before the game. Just as the team is announced, we'll do a live, and then I'm off to the pub to watch the game. And on that note, have a fantastic day, Celtic fans all around the world. Lit.